Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video, and that's right, you read the title, you know exactly what it is that I'm reviewing, and as it was teased in the last review video, that's right, Bruce Lee's son playing the titled character, and man, just the legacy that his son, Brandon, would leave off in this one film based off of a comic book by the same name, comic book / comic strip, from what I read, from James O'Barr. This comic book character being brought to the big screen, and pretty much it's the only best and only, pretty much there's only one movie adaptation of this comic book story, and just you get my point. And not to mention, this movie is celebrating its anniversary. That's right, guys. I am finally reviewing the one and only from 1994, The Crow. Yes, The Crow. Wow. I'm glad to have finally seen the original, and again, the one and only Crow movie, because pretty much, it only should, there really should have only been just one Crow movie, and that being this, of course. Just again, the legacy that was left off with this movie, and from the late Brandon Lee, who plays the title character, it's just amazing. It's amazing how this comic book movie turned out, and, how it was done, and, with the direction and the style, and just, it's amazing. It's really amazing. And it did not disappoint for me. I thought it was pretty good, of course. And I'd say, yeah, it can be, for some people, it can be tough to watch, difficult and such. But at the same time, it's a really good movie. Just, those kind of movies that are difficult and tough to watch, they turn out to be really good. And The Crow being one of them, of course. But for me, I managed to handle with what goes on in this movie, because, yeah, just a lot of heavy and a lot of crazy stuff that happens that goes on in this movie, and hardly anybody in this movie, the characters, just mostly, say 4 characters are, the only decent and nicest people in this movie. Everybody else is either just a jerk, an evil person, and from a gang group, and so on. You get my point, just, yeah. Yeah, so again, just having to finally watch this movie and, just seeing what it was like, and because, well, yes, I am well aware of the infamous accidental death of Brandon Lee, which I'll get to in a moment. Yeah, but, at the same time, just what Brandon Lee brought to his character on screen in what would be his final performance, well, it for sure did not disappoint. The Crow, to me, was really good. It definitely was. Alright, so, enough said. As always, read the description / the story. The night before his wedding, musician Eric Draven, yeah, I'm saying that last name right, and his fiancée are brutally murdered by members of a violent inner-city gang. On the anniversary of their death, Eric rises from the grave and assumes the gothic mantle of the Crow, a supernatural avenger, tracking down the thugs responsible for the crimes and mercilessly, murdering them. Eric eventually confronts head gangster Top Dollar to complete his macabre mission. I mispronounced that one word. I'm sorry, but you know me sometimes. Alright, so with that out of the way, a little bit of background, as I sometimes do. Yeah, just to keep some things short and brief, the best I can, so, and long story short. But yeah. So, again, this being based off of a comic book / comic strip, which, I actually, honestly, I wasn't really aware of that much, but now that I've seen the movie and did a little bit of research, now I know fully. Again, the comic book / comic strip of The Crow being written and created by James O'Barr, and, well, in the 1990s, considerations and plans for there to be a movie adaptation of the comic book by the same name being done / distributed by both Miramax Films and Dimension Films being involved as well. And, especially Miramax at that time in the 90s being run by the Weinstein brothers. So, yeah, want to get that out because there's no denying. Well, the movie found its director, which, that being Alex Proyas. I have to look back and see, what he did before this. Because what he would do after The Crow, because he didn't really do that many movies. One of the most, other, known films that he's done, aside from The Crow, is I, Robot. Yeah, I, Robot, which he would do 10 years after doing this. So, yeah. Which, yeah, I mean, I, Robot, of course, was pretty good, and I've done my review if you want to go check that out. So, yeah. So, before he did say I, Robot, he did this movie. And, what Alex brought to this movie, his direction, pretty good. And when it came to the casting, well, the late Brandon Lee playing the titled character, and, Eric Draven / The Crow. Because, yeah, that's what Eric Draven does go by. His, his identity and such, And also because the writer / creator of The Crow was, he was not so sure, and he at first didn't like the casting choice of Brandon Lee playing the titled character, because he had not long ago seen Brandon Lee in a samurai film, and he felt as though that Brandon Lee would bring some samurai karate stuff to the titled character, but he soon changed his mind and realized that, what? Brandon is really good at this, because, what Brandon Lee brought to the performance of Eric Draven / The Crow, totally different, and rightfully so, because I'm pretty sure, I think it's obvious, and no doubt about it, that Brandon clearly would have had to have read some of the comic book / comic strips of The Crow in preparation for playing the title character. No doubt about it. And you know what? Because, the same goes for anybody else whom, would be casted for the first time playing those characters. You know what I mean? Because I can think of, say, when Hugh Jackman had to read some, Wolverine comics, and any other actor, whether if it's from, say, DC or Marvel, yeah. And also, The Crow coming out in 1994, that was during the time when comic book movie adaptations of comic books were at its peak, and, slowly but surely we would get more of them, especially when the early 2000s rolled in. So, yeah. And, keep in mind, because The Crow came out after, say, the Superman films and after the 2 Batman films from Tim Burton and Michael Keaton. So, yeah. Comic book movies were slowly but surely at its peak, if you get what I'm saying, and I'm sure I'm saying it right, but anyways. And of course, can't ignore this and can't deny it, because, it wouldn't feel right if not talking about the tragic, accidental death of Brandon Lee, because, yeah, even before seeing The Crow fully, I, of course, was well aware, knowing the story and infamous accidental death of Brandon Lee on the set of Crow, because, there was an accidental gunshot, a gunshot stunt that went horribly wrong. An actual bullet was in the gun, and, they forgot to take it out, but, the fake dummy bullet was in there. But yeah, and if you know this story, and just to keep it, short and brief, not to go full detail, just, yeah. And, I think like right around the part where, you know, the members of the street gang come to attack Eric and his fiance. During that's when, like, say, you know, a gun was supposed to go off and, you know, to shoot at Brendan Lee's character, but it went horribly wrong, of course. And whom it was that you know, was the one that held and wielded the gun, that being that was, well, I gotta pull them up, so, that was, hold on a second, yeah, that was the late Michael Massey, if I'm saying his last name right, who played Fun Boy, one of the, you know, gang members. So he was the one that had the gun and, you know, accidentally, you know, fired it, and thus Brendan was shot down. They thought that he would get up, but he didn't, and thus he was rushed to the hospital, and of course, well, sadly and unfortunately, poor Brendan Lee, he did not make it. And even though it wasn't his fault, of course it wasn't, but who can blame him? Because Michael Massey, he for years, and up until his death, just, it haunted him, and he struggled because of that. And again, even though it wasn't his fault, it was an accident, okay? Nothing intentional. And, you know, the prop people, I guess, I don't know, because whether it's really to blame, you know, for them to be blamed and such, I mean, how are they supposed to know? And it's not like they did anything intentional, okay? Just, come on. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. And also, up until Michael's death, he chose not to watch The Crow. And again, it's understandable why, because of what he was put through. I mean, you know, he did continue on, you know, doing some acting and such. I recall that, you know, some of his last films that he did before he sadly passed away, I think he was in both the Amazing Spider-Man films with Andrew Garfield. Yeah, because he was in those. I have to go back and look, because I totally forgot that he was in them. So, but anyways, so yeah. But eventually, you know, the movie, of course, was finished, and all they had shot with Brandon Lee. And, well, with the movie coming out, you know, great to see that it did successfully well, and in memory of Brandon Lee, and this being one of his finest and last roles in his career. Yeah. Yeah, it's sad and unfortunate, you know, and no doubt about it. The infamous accidental gunshot, you know, on the set of Crow, going down as one of the most shocking and devastating moments in Hollywood history, without a doubt. It's really unfortunate. Okay, but with that out of the way, and to lighten things up, yeah, let's get into the film itself. Yeah, because, yeah, I mean, I honestly didn't really know what to expect to come out from this film. I'd only seen just and I say very little snippets and such of this movie, clips and so on, you know, from what I had seen on YouTube, and yeah. And I'm pretty sure I probably, like, checked out maybe one of the trailers or something, but, you know, I mean, you know, and here's another thing, because, yeah, anybody who would have not seen The Crow fully, some would be aware and would know the iconic look to the main character that Brandon Lee plays, because with the white makeup and the black lining and such, you know, that gothic look he has, and as I read in the description / the story, so yeah. So yeah, taking place in Detroit, Michigan. Well, because you know, it's Halloween night, Devil's Night and such, October 30th, and well, we see that you know, a building is caught on fire, and well, two people that sadly, one of them already lost his life, but the other still conscious and is still alive. Well, because you know, Eric Draven, from what we learn, was shot and killed, and, you know, plumped, you know, from a window, and his soon-to-be wife, because they were going to get married, Shelley Webster, being played by Sophia Shyness, if I'm saying her last name right. Again, bear with me. And we also have one of our other main characters, and I've at times forgotten that he was in this movie. Sergeant Albrecht, if I'm even saying that name right, being played by good old Ernie Hudson, aka Winston from Ghostbusters. Yeah, I'm pretty sure The Crow would be something else that Ernie would be well known for, aside from Ghostbusters, more than likely, But I'm sure, more than just, say, Ghostbusters and The Crow that he's known for, but, So, yeah, he plays a police sergeant, and one of those he's like one of the only few characters, aside from three others, that are pretty much the only nicest characters in this movie, and as I stated, until I get to the rest of the characters. So Shelley Webster being taken to a hospital, and we also get the introduction of another character, that being Sarah, being played by Rachel Davis. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got the first name, I pronounced it right. So yeah, young Rachel Davis playing Sarah. The sergeant thinks that Sarah is a sister to Shelley, but no, actually, Sarah and Shelley, they're friends, and apparently, and according to Sarah, Shelley has taken care of Sarah multiple times, pretty much Shelley's been a babysitter to Sarah, and a very nice and sweet babysitter from what we learn, throughout the rest of the film. And Shelley, asking the sergeant for Eric to take care of Sarah, but she doesn't know, and, because the sergeant kind of lied to Shelley and to Sarah as well, because with what the heck just happened in the apartment building, and, we cut to 1 year later, and sadly, Shelley didn't make it. Both her and Eric, of course, and we see their tombstones, Sarah, paying a visit to their tombstones in respects and such, condolences, and, Sarah, always roaming around the streets of Detroit, Michigan on her skateboard. I sometimes, for some reason, get those mixed up. Skateboards and roller skates. Skateboard. So her riding on her skateboard, and at times her hanging out with the sergeant, and, you wonder, because where the heck are her parents? Well, the movie does establish, what happened to her father, but as for her mother, she is around, but, yeah, because when we see her mother a little later on, jeez. So hardly anybody is nice in this movie. The only ones are, of course, the sergeant, Sarah, as well as, the late Eric and Shelley, and the more we get to see of Shelley. But at one point, because, we see some, gang members, trashing inside of a building with pinball machines, and while that's going on, something happens in the cemetery. The ground starts to move and shake, and, apparently, we see that the late Eric Draven, being played by the late Brandon Lee, has resurrected, and, we also have a crow that, tags along and helps out Eric Draven, because, what happens with Eric Draven, because his purpose of being resurrected, and, he would take on the position of, becoming the Crow, and, because, as I read in the description / the story, a supernatural avenger, and, pretty much because, and even if some of you would immediately figure this out, go after those whom killed him and killed his soon-to-be wife, and, which she was still his fiancée. And, as the film proceeds, Eric, preparing himself up and such, with the wardrobe he puts on and with the makeup, and when, he enters into the abandoned, burning apartment where he and his late fiancée used to live in, and many times in this movie he would have flashbacks, and he would see what happened, and even when, say, we see each of the gang members attacking him and his fiancée, and we would even see at times happy flashback moments, where, things were so peaceful and happy with him and his fiance, and him just in awe when she says to him, "I love you." Yeah, it was nice and sweet to see that they were really in love, but sadly, what would happen to both of them? It's really a shame, and how he is the only one that resurrects, just him. As for the rest of the characters, yeah, because let's go ahead and talk about the gang members. Basically, yeah, because this criminal gang group that's led by Top Dollar. He's the a head of a gang that works for T-Bird. The gang members / the villains in this movie, well, Top Dollar, being played by Michael Wincott, and his love interest, I guess you could say, Misa, I think I'm saying that right, being played by Bei Ling. And there's something about Misa that we discover later on and established by Top Dollar. There's also T-Bird being played by David Patrick Kelly. There's Shank being played by Angel David, and Tintin being played by Lawrence Mason. Fun Boy, as I mentioned, Fun Boy being played by the late Michael Massey. Again, if I'm pronouncing his last name right or wrong, I don't know. And there's Grange, I hope I'm saying the name right, being played by the one and only Tony Todd. Yeah, I know who Tony Todd is, a good character actor, and I remember him best playing Worf's brother, Kern from Star Trek, yeah. And he was also the voice of Zoom in the CW Flash series. And he's done more than those two, okay? And he's done some pretty good voice work. I think, yeah, he was also the voice of Venom. Yeah, he voiced Venom for something Spider-Man, yeah. So, and there's also Gideon, who owns a pawn shop. He's in on this too with the evil gang members. Gideon being played by John Polito, if I am pronouncing his last name right. And there's also Mickey, I think, yeah, because he's the guy that was at this like food truck kind of place and such, where there are like two or three times I should say, where the police sergeant and Sarah would sometimes hang out and have food and such. Mickey, who runs the place and is the chef. Mickey being played by Bill Raymond. He was a decent character, nice and such, but yeah. And there's also, like, a detective or chief of police or something, Taurus, being played by Marco Rodriguez. This character, this guy, he's totally an asshole. Specifically at the police sergeant, Ernie Hudson's character. Yeah, their relationship is just they have none. It's like Taurus just completely just hates the police sergeant. And what happens later on. And also, there's, and she doesn't have that much of a big part. I believe she is, shortly will be his ex-wife, yeah, Annabelle, Annabelle, being played by Kim Skies, because there's a scene between him and Ernie Hudson's character, but yeah. And there's also lead cop being played by Rock Toolby, if I'm saying that right. Yeah, and some of the other, cast members, there's Waldo being played by Jeff Cadinati, if I'm saying that right. There's MJ being played by Henry Kingy Jr. Yeah, pretty sure I said that right. And, yeah, so... But, yeah, so, again, getting back to the story and so on, because, Eric Draven, who now becomes the Crow, and, what he basically is doing, and with the help of the Crow, seeking out each gang members who was responsible and murdered him and his soon-to-be wife, and one of his first victims being Tintin, who wields knives. And there was a moment between Tintin and Gideon, Because, you know, even though they're all villains, like, sometimes, you know, each of them just, they don't get along with one another. Not all of them, but some of them do. And in this case, yeah, Tintin and Gideon, because Tintin, you know, dropping something off at Gideon's pawn shop and so on, and just things didn't go well between them. And also, a lot of foul language in this, mostly, like, say, the F-bomb and so on. So Eric, who now becomes the Crow, his first victim being Tintin, and yeah, and whenever he comes face to face with his victims, he would have flashbacks and visions of seeing each of them, and one of them, you know, and attacking, like, if it's him, or most notably his fiance, and yeah, like, and the Crow taking on Tintin, and yeah, Tintin meeting his ultimate demise, and taste of his own medicine when the Crow catches one of his knives and, you know, throws it at his shoulder, and then using another one of his knives and just, I think, probably, like, going for the head, I want to say. And yeah, and just throughout the film, like, the Crow going after each of his victims, and sometimes he would leave a graffiti / a signature, pretty much, you know, as like what Batman would do sometimes, or any other comic book character, or most notably Zorro, yeah, leaving the sign of a Z, that being a graffiti and signature. So, like, the signature and graffiti for the Crow, well, by setting something on flames and making the shape of a crow. And with the crow, the bird itself, being, you know, like, helping out Eric Draven, and it's discovered later on, and the bad guys discover that the Crow has a big connection with Eric, because the Crow is a link to him, you know, like, between the land of the living and the realm of the dead and such. Yeah, so. And the Crow, watching and seeing the gang members and alerting and informing and signaling the Eric / the Crow to go after them and where to go and such. Yeah, very helpful bird there, yeah. And I'd like to point this out. I like that there are a couple of times where with the Crow, you know, ha ha, some of the Crow sound effects, a couple of times, and I recognize it, where it's one sample of a crow cawing comes straight from the Haunted Mansion, which that's really cool, so I like that. I recognize that very well, and I'm sure some of you would too, any of you Haunted Mansion lovers and so on, and if you know your sound effects. Anyways, and slowly but surely, each of the two characters, the police sergeant and Sarah, because the first couple of times that they would run into Eric, and even though they don't know that at first, but they slowly but surely do, and eventually they quickly discover that, yeah, it is Eric. He's alive, and is he a ghost or something? Well, not really, because, you know, and not really a zombie, just resurrect from the dead, and he seems... he's fine looking and just nothing else. Yeah. And also, yeah, because after killing Tintin and the rest of the victims that he kills, well, because when it comes to Gideon, like I said, Gideon having a part, you know, of T-Bird and, you know, Top Dollar, that group of gang members, well, because when Eric goes to Gideon's pawn shop and, well, you know, the interrogation that Eric does on Gideon, just, like, wounding him and forcing, you know, Gideon to show him about this gold engagement ring, and, you know, Gideon just insulting Eric a couple of times, and ultimately, when Eric, he doesn't kill Gideon, but he leaves him to die with what Eric does when his... you know, his business is finished in his pawn shop, where, you know, he pours some, you know, fire liquid and such, you know, and, well, is gonna set the place on flames, and for there to be a huge explosion, and that's what ultimately happens. A huge explosion destroys and obliterates and damages Gideon's pawn shop, And lucky Gideon, because he managed to survive from that. He went out the back door. But what would happen next to Gideon, and when he would, give Top Dollar and the others information on what happened in his pawn shop, yeah, he would meet his demise. Okay, and let's talk more about, and pretty much he's basically the main antagonist. I mean, as if anybody else, and part of the the gang members, from Top Dollar and, T-Bird. Top Dollar being played by Michael Wincott, because, Top Dollar, because he's got the jacket and such, leather jacket, and the long hair, and with the weapons he would carry sometimes, yeah. And I would say, again, his love interest, I'm pretty sure, Misa, and it's established a little bit later on, and when it comes to Gideon, giving Top Dollar, and with Misa, and Grange, if I'm still saying his name right, Tony Todd's character, giving them the information on what happened at his pawn shop about, this goth-looking guy and, Eric Draven and such. And they don't think that, of course they wouldn't believe at first that it's Eric Draven and he's somehow came back from the dead. Because, again, Gideon giving them the information, and at one point, Top Dollar mentions to Gideon that, Misa is Top Dollar's father's daughter. Okay. But apparently they're love interests? Well, because with how this movie is, and with the villains in this movie, yeah, I guess, I don't know, but one of those things. Anyways, and as I said, Gideon meeting his demise, where Top Dollar brutally kills him, stabbing him through the neck with a sword, and just, then finishing him off, can't you die quickly, and just, shooting him at times. And also there was a moment where Top Dollar pecked out someone's eyeballs. Jeez. I know that's disturbing for me to say, but it's true. It's true. It's in the movie. So, from someone, as far as I recall, someone that displeased him. But, yeah. So, and more on the police sergeant, Albrecht, if I'm still pronouncing his name right, possibly, Ernie Hudson, his character, because he is slowly but surely, putting it together and realizing that, holy cow, it is Eric. He's risen from the dead somehow. And with Sarah, how she slowly but surely and quickly realizes and believes that, yeah, it is Eric. And as I mentioned, when reading the description / the story, Eric, being a part of this, musician band and so on. And, he has one song. There's one song that he had written that is a pretty good one, and Sarah knows it so well. It's called It Can't Rain All the Time, because he quotes those lyrics to Sarah at one point after the first time that they see each other again, when Eric saved her from an incoming car while she was skateboarding. And throughout the film, and even Sarah comments that, it had been raining for a long time and she wishes that it could stop raining at one point. And that's when Eric then says, it can't rain all the time. And that's when he vanishes, and when she was like, Eric? And yeah. So yeah. And also, yeah, let's go ahead and mention her. Sarah's mother. Oh boy, because I'm sure, anybody would immediately suspect, and yes, because Sarah's mother, Darla, and Sarah calls her by her real name, Darla. Darla being played by Anna Thompson, there's no P, Thompson. I think pretty sure I have seen Anna Thompson before, yeah. Yeah. Because if anybody would have guessed immediately and, turning out to be true, yeah, Darla being a drug addict, and also she's, to make things worse, dating one of the gang members. And in this case, it's Fun Boy. She's hanging out and dating with Fun Boy. And when it comes to Fun Boy, let's go ahead and bring that up now, because Fun Boy's demise when, well, Fun Boy and Darla, they have some fun to their own one evening, and, well, you know, doing some drugs and such and getting high, and of course the bird, the crow, watching them and alerting Eric, and well, Eric showing up and interrogating and confronting Fun Boy, and of course, well, doesn't take too long for Eric to start gunning him down and wounding him severely, and then ultimately, of course, killing him. And as I said, with flashbacks that he would have, you know, with each of the gang members and what they did to his fiance, yeah. And when he's done with Fun Boy, he then turns to Darla. He does spare her because Eric knows that that's Sarah's mother. Well, and surely, before he and his fiancée died, they knew Sarah's mother. And so, yeah, he confronts Sarah's mother, and I gotta say, the dialogue that comes from Eric sometimes, really good dialogue, and he gives some important messages and very, you know, true facts, because, you know, what he says to Sarah's mother, you know, a mother and, you know, God and so on, very true, and pointing out to her that the drug stuff that she was taking, morphine, or however it's pronounced, and that we see, like, kind of squirting out of her arm, you know, being bad for her. And basically, and in other words, you know, telling her that she really has to set her up, you know, she's got to rethink her life and to, you know, think straight and just snap out of it, you know? And because, you know, she has a daughter, like, does she just want to mess up her life and so on? And if at any point she risks dying from a drug overdose and so on, yeah, I think you get my point. And if any of you that have seen this movie and what happens to Darla, and thankfully, we see later on that Darla did listen to Eric, but until I get to that in just a little bit. And coming back to Ernie Hudson's character, because again, him putting it together slowly but surely that, yeah, it's Eric, even when he has like a picture of Eric, you know, and a picture of him, and I'm pretty sure his fiancée is in the picture too, with the musician band that he was in, and he draws on the picture that has Eric, like, drawing what he saw when he first encountered Eric after Gideon's pawn shop exploded. Because with the white makeup and the black, you know, markings and such, drawing it on a picture and trying to figure out if that really is Eric. And sure enough, he discovers and realizes, as well as Sarah did, that, yeah, it is Eric. So at one point, Eric visits Ernie Hudson's character at his apartment, kind of spooking him at first, and then they have this conversation, and Eric getting some information about, you know, what happened to his fiancée at the hospital, and Eric, like, you know, touching Ernie Hudson's face, and, you know, from his vision, seeing his vision, you know, because he was at the hospital, and Eric discovered that he had stayed in the hospital for a long time, you know, beside Shelley and such, and very thoughtful of him, very thoughtful. And even at one point, because Eric, he discovers and spots a photo of you know, Ernie Hudson's character's his character and his soon-to-be ex-wife, and he establishes to Eric that they will get a divorce soon. You know, they'll soon be divorced, and yeah, just the conversation that they have, it goes pretty well and so on. And thus, well, Eric leaving, and, you know, Ernie assumed that Eric would, like, you know, would vanish, but no, because he was thinking of taking the front door and stuff like that. So yeah, which he does. And to speed things up still, because, well, yeah, still, the victims that Eric goes after, in fact, one of the next victims he goes for is T-Bird and Shank. He goes for T-Bird first because at one point, T-Bird and Shank, they stop at this place. Shank goes in to get, like drugs and stuff like that. And Eric gets in the car and has T-Bird held gun hostage and forcing T-Bird to drive off and drive fast. Because Eric knows what he's doing and how he's going to defeat and kill T-Bird. And because they're speeding through the streets, and this catches the attention of a police car, and well, yeah, there's a police car chase, and ultimately, what happens is they end up, Eric and T-Bird, they end up at a shipping dock, and what Eric does is he ties up T-Bird, and T-Bird starts to remember and recognize, but he refuses to believe because he has died, and how can he be back to life? He starts to realize that it's Eric, but to him it's impossible, and that's understandable. And what he does next, after tying him up, well, and putting some explosives in the car, and having the car drive off, and making its way to, the edge of the dock and going into the water, and thus an explosion happens, and T-Bird is defeated. And Shank had followed them, and, well, now Shank is next. And, Shank managed to go back to the main headquarters and such of the villains, and of course, Top Dollar, and the information that Shank gives to them. And what happens next is, Eric, he makes his way to where the villains are hiding out, and he confronts them, but he only wants Shank. Well, and I guess, and from what I can tell, just, the order of victims he wants to kill, so that's how he's doing it, Eric. He only wants Shank, and that's whom his next victim is going to be. But and when some of the bad guys, the group members of the gang, they start to shoot down Eric, well, the thing is, and even Gideon, when he tried to, gunfire at Eric, well, Eric, throughout the film, he's unstoppable. He is unstoppable. He can't be taken down. After getting hit by bullets, it has no effect to him. Like I said, he's unstoppable. And boy, when he tricks them into, falling down because of all those gunshots, well, he apparently disappeared, but I guess he went under the table or something, because then he starts pulling the bad guys under the table and unloads / unleashes his the weapons he's using on the bad guys. He starts shooting all of them, and some of them escaping and retreating, and not to mention because in the building that they're in, run by Top Dollar and so on, there's a room with musicians and, with the audience, clearly, because them being on drugs and so on. And when some of the bad guys go, flying out of the window and, landing, up top them, they can see this, and everybody starts, fleeing and so on. Ultimately, after all that happening, all hell breaking loose, now the attention is fully turned to Shank, Eric confronting Shank, and he once again gets some flashbacks / visions, this time seeing Shank and what Shank did to his fiancée, and thus, Eric, he throws Shank out of the window, falling to his death. And then, right after that, the police, they manage to show up, and they can see what just happened, and they confront Eric. And even little do they know it's Eric and who they're confronting, and that they don't realize that, it's Eric. He's alive. They don't know that. So they try to gun him down, and there's a little bit of a chase, and you have a chopper chasing Eric down as well. And also, by this point, Ernie Hudson, his character, had been basically given the boot by, again, the asshole, Taurus, because Ernie Hudson went by Taurus's back, like taking Taurus's file, and Taurus, said to him that, you're covering for someone, aren't you? And yeah, Ernie got the boot for that, but he knew what he was doing, and rightfully so, and what would happen later on, and by this point, helping out Eric, because eventually, Ernie Hudson, his character, shows up, and he helps out Eric by getting him the hell out of there because of being chased by the cops and such. Pardon my French, but it's true. And after all that, well, because Eric, he, sneaked away again, getting out of Ernie Hudson's, his car and such, and he knew that was coming, yeah. And to speed things up still, because, well, as I mentioned early on, Sarah's mother, Darla, because by this point, she's started to become better, and we see that, well, Sarah, back at the apartment that her and her mother stay at, she wakes up and sees that her mother is fixing her a nice breakfast and fixing eggs, and things are starting to look much better now for Sarah and her mother, even now Sarah calling her by mom. So yeah, as I mentioned, a couple of times where she called her mom by Darla, so and I'm pretty sure that Darla is Sarah's biological mother. I'm pretty sure, I don't see why not, but anyways, so yeah, that's nice to see that there's one happy thing that happens, and of course, again, Sarah's mother, Darla, lightening up and becoming a much better person/mother. And for the villains, well, they discover and they now see and realize that, yeah, it's true that Eric has risen from the dead, and they discover on the crow, the bird, and how, as Misa says, being linked with Eric, between the land of the living and the realm of the dead, and that's when they realize and come up with a plan that, they will plan and try to kill the crow, because without the crow, Eric is weak and such. And then at one point, well, because Eric, he's back at the cemetery, and Sarah is there, and, more moments between Sarah and Eric were pretty good, even when, Sarah, visits the abandoned, burned, apartment where Eric and his late fiancé used to live, and finding a white, fluffy cat there, I think named Gabriel? Yeah, pretty sure. Well, she was interacting with Eric even though he wasn't there, plain sight. She thought that Eric cared and such, but he does, and even a couple of times where they do hug each other, and supposedly the last time that they would see one another, and as I said, back at the cemetery where Eric is, and Sarah showing up there, and, well, some emotional dialogue between Sarah and Eric, and talking about Shelley, and a necklace, that Eric was wearing. He passes it to Sarah, because he says to Sarah that she'd be happy that you would have this, and so on. So yeah. And, it's great to see, and, well, clearly Eric knew how much Sarah and Shelley loved each other, and, well, Shelley, pretty much at that time really being like a mother to Sarah, and before, with Sarah's actual mother, and before, and as of now, she become a much better person/mother, Darla, before all that, and going for one last hug, and supposedly this could be the last time they see one another, Sarah saying goodbye to Eric, and, I should have seen it coming. It's so obvious. And sure enough, yeah, because at one point, Sarah, as she's on her skateboard and making her way to a church, well, because it's so obvious that, the bad guys, all that's left, just Top Dollar, Misa, and Grange. They're at the church, and basically Grange holds Sarah hostage. He grabs her, and yeah, this being a setup slash a trap, and the crow, obviously, detecting and seeing that Sarah is in trouble, and alerting Eric, and thus immediately making his way to the church, and yeah, because it is a trap, it's so obvious. And at one point, Grange, shoots down the crow, and oh my gosh. And without the crow, yeah, Eric is useless. Like, he can't do this without the crow. And ultimately, because, well, when they're interrogating and confronting Eric, at one point, Top Dollar does, wound and shoot/wound Eric, and this time he feels pain. He feels it and he collapses. And yeah, but thankfully, at one point, we see that the crow gets back up. The crow is not killed, and their attempts to try to shoot down the crow, they're having no luck. And, even when Eric still has some strength in him to take on the bad guys, and even when, ex-police sergeant Albrick, if I'm still saying, I think the T might be silent, but, correct me if I'm right or wrong, if I am closely pronouncing Ernie Hudson's character right. He shows up. Yeah, he shows up. I should have known he would show up and help out Eric. He does so by, a gunfire happens, and even when at one point, Ernie does take down, Tony Todd's character, and all that's left now is just Misa and, of course, Top Dollar, and making their way up top of the church, and with Sarah still being held hostage, and Eric and Ernie Hudson, them making their way up as well, and some more dialogue between them. And when it comes to Misa, because Top Dollar and Sarah, they make their way up top some more and outside of the church on top of the roof. And Misa, well, she a couple of times trying to take down the bird, the crow, and even when she has the crow in her clutches, well, I was waiting for the crow to have a moment of his own. The bird. The bird pecks Misa right in the eyes, her being completely blind, and she at one point grabs the rope of one of the church bells, and, well, sure enough, she falls to her death, and that's the end of Misa right there. And by the way, if I might have been mispronouncing her name, if it's Mika, I think more than likely, so I apologize. Whether if it's Misa or Mika, let me know. But yeah, again, ultimately, yes, because she meets her demise, and it's thanks to the bird, the crow, yeah. So now, all that's left is Top Dollar, and Eric still having some strength in him, even though he's wounded. Even at one point, Ernie Hudson, his character, got wounded, because Top Dollar and Mika, because they shot at Ernie, so he's wounded as well. But, it all comes down to Eric, obviously, and he has to be the one to, take down the main antagonist, which, of course, being Top Dollar. And, he threw Sarah, because then she's holding on to her life, and, the showdown between Eric and Top Dollar, and, well, of course, ultimately, yeah, Top Dollar being no match to Eric, and Eric showing Top Dollar, his visions of his fiancée, Shelley, and, well, Top Dollar being responsible for all of this, and, responsible and being, the one that was, responsible for the deaths of Eric and his fiancée. Yeah, so his demise, oh man, very fitting, because after, Eric, takes down Top Dollar and showing Top Dollar his visions of his fiancée in the hospital, sharing his pain to Top Dollar and causing him to fall and being impaled by one of those pointy by some of those pointy things of the church, and yeah, a brutal way to go to be taken out. Yeah, Top Dollar got what was coming to him, rightfully so. Even though it was very brutal, still, he totally deserved it. And so, the aftermath of this and the epilogue, well, because by this point, the police and the ambulance, have arrived, Ernie's character being taken into hospital, and once again, the asshole, which, of course, being Taurus, is there, and still pissed off towards Ernie's character. Yes, and he even, told Taurus, set him straight that he missed everything, and whom he's going after, which of course being Top Dollar, being up there and, already dead. And as for Eric, well, Yeah, because by that point he did say his goodbyes to Eric and Sarah, and well, he made his way back to the cemetery, and he's right up his fiance's tombstone, and then we see, I almost said Sarah, sorry, Shelley. Yeah, Shelley shows up in person, and yeah, Eric can see Shelley, and Shelley confronting him, like, consulting him and stuff like that, comforting him, I should say, comforting. And, well, and pretty much that, yeah, Eric and Shelley, they're finally at peace, and may they finally and officially rest in peace, both of them, happily together again, and so on, and yeah. And we get one last bit of narration, because there's a bit of narration at times in this movie from Sarah, and the narration / dialogue that Sarah has is pretty good, and how the last shot we see is the bird, the crow, flying off into the city, and the shot freezes, and fading to black, and again, with the last bit of narration from Sarah, some well-put dialogue, and yeah, true stuff that she says, but yeah, and a dedication to Brandon Lee and someone by the name of Elsa. Yeah, it's like someone else, a part of the movie who sadly died as well. So yeah, a dedication to both of them. Yeah, just a great way to end the movie right there. The Crow, oh my gosh, because again, what a fantastic movie this is, and now that I've finally seen it, and, that I've fully seen it, and just, yeah, it's fantastic. The story is really good. The characters, the cast of characters, Brandon Lee playing the titled character, Ernie Hudson, Michael Wincott, David Patrick Kelly, Sophia Shinnis, and the late Michael Massey, Tony Todd, and the rest of the cast of characters, and the film's director, fantastic job at directing this. The music and score, really good too, and with there's a bit of funny moments that happen. I'm pretty sure I did get maybe one or two chuckles, but mostly there's a lot of serious and a lot of drama in this, and a lot of brutal and intenseful stuff that happens. All that was really good too, and with the action and the killings and the violence and gore, just, yeah, and the way this movie looks with its set and design, and, from this coming from a comic book, just, yeah, everything about The Crow is fantastic and perfect. Practically perfect in every way, as Mary Poppins would say. And I'm giving The Crow, well, what the heck, 10 out of 10 stars. Yes, 10 out of 10 stars for The Crow, the one and only Crow. And what about you guys? What did you think of The Crow itself? Do you only prefer the first Crow movie? Because I'm pretty sure a lot of you would just go with this, because with the later, Crow films that, they're sequels to the first. Yeah, even, and with the Crow movie with Bill Skarsgård, just none of them are good and better than the original, because let's face it, and it's a fact, no doubt about it, the first Crow movie from '94, starring the late legendary Brandon Lee, is the superior Crow movie. Yeah, just what did you think of the first Crow movie itself? Were any of you, like me, familiar with this before seeing it fully, knowing the image of Brandon Lee as the titled character, and knowing about the tragic loss of Brandon Lee? What were some of your favorite moments from the first Crow movie, with the action and with the characters, the heavy drama and emotional stuff? Yeah, just everything about The Crow. What did you think about it? And with what I've had to say, my review, and yeah, what did you think of my review? Leave comments and give this review video a like, as always. And with that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of the one and only superior The Crow. More review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I'll see you guys in the next video / review. And stay tuned later tonight, because the next film I'm going to be reviewing alongside with one of my good friends, well, to best describe it, this too being very heavy and just dark and with a lot of drama and intenseful stuff happening, Joaquin Phoenix playing the Clown Prince of Crime. Oh yeah, you know exactly what it is, pretty much. Yeah, again, stay tuned for that. Take care, happy anniversary to The Crow, and until I review the rest of the Crow movies, yes, peace out. It can't rain all the time.